There was no space for queer Asian women. That wasn't a thing that happened. It's really heartbreaking, but also really beautiful to think about how far we've come in so many ways.
In 1992, I was the first gay Chamorro male to come out in Guam on World AIDS Day, but also as a person living with HIV.
A friend and I started a Chinese gay group, and we advertised it in some of the local gay newspaper.
And the money that we collected, I created a medical mission to the Philippines in my hometown.
We were one of the few families that crossed the Broadway line in Chinatown. There was the Italian, what's now North Beach, and Chinatown, and nobody ever crossed that line. If they crossed that line, you were beat up.
And she has this funny story about how when she was in high school, she was in a gang called the Rebels. And it was a gang of these lesbians, like young lesbian teenagers in North Beach. It's funny, but it's so real, right? Because it's an example of how queer people of color have to find ways to survive. And surviving means getting together. It means community.
My name is Ellen, and I am a lesbian. Hard for me to say that for a while, but I can say it now. Queer is probably easier. And I just have been queer for 3 years out of the closet. But I've been a Christian for most of my life. And I've been Asian for all my life. That's okay. So now, for the past 3 years, I'm in a homosexual relationship with my partner, and that's just been the best thing of my whole life. I've never been happier. I've never been completely me and whole. I feel just so joyful, really, really happy. So it's good.
The Dragon Fruit Project is an intergenerational oral history project where we collect, transcribe, and disseminate stories about LGBTQ Asian Pacific Islander people who have been active in the community in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. This project was started in 2012 at the GLBT Historical Society. Out of a collection of 702, only 2 of them featured Asian Pacific Islander queer women.
And that just blew me away. It's such a small microcosm. I know so many people whose stories are, I'm sure, equally as valuable, but haven't been captured yet.
It's sad sometimes that our history doesn't get fully represented, and the rich history that's not there is about how people really did risk crossing boundaries.
This project sets out to first add more stories to that collection, but also find ways to make these stories accessible and public. It's a project that came from the community. The project has changed so much because we've been so open to an organic process that brought in the community.
And it's been, for me personally, a really incredible experience to hear some of those stories. I've been working mostly on transcribing, and to hear those stories and to see just both how radically different things were and how similar things are, and how so much of it is just like the human experience. But then also just how much has changed and how much our lives today and our work today is really riding on the shoulders of people who dealt with those struggles in those days and did the hard work for us and created these environments that are so much safer and better for us now. Not that we don't still have huge struggles, but it is really humbling to see what people went through and how much we have benefited from it as young queer Asian Americans in the Bay Area today.
So I've transcribed one interview, and I actually haven't finished yet. It takes quite a long time. He's Filipino, and what's interesting is that we are generations apart, and what I've learned is that we have a lot in common. Well, the interviewer asked this person, what was it like coming out? Which is a general question people tend to ask. And he said, I had to come out as being Filipino first. And that was something that completely hit home for me. I wanted to start out with transcribing mainly because I was afraid to be an interviewer, and I wanted to get involved with the project. I realized that to listen to someone's interview and to document it was not only very therapeutic, it was groundbreaking because it was making history, that these were people that their histories weren't documented before. They've done incredible activist work in the community nationwide.
Awesome experience because I had the opportunity to learn so much of what history can do. And you meet with so many different people. It's like I never would expect myself to be part of a big community as I am in now.
It's an honor to participate and transcribe because I feel like I'm taking part in history in the making.
I feel honored that this younger generation is looking back at the work that's been done, and in some ways, honoring and respecting the people that came before them. And so that validates your work, that validates your life, and that validates the choices that you make.
I felt very honored, and then I also feel very old. It's like, okay, you guys are looking for history, so time passes so fast and quickly for each of us. For me, I'm a person that is usually in the background. I'm not one that is proactively out there. I'm very good at supporting many things and many effects and many causes, but I prefer to be in the background. So being interviewed was, it was a little intimidating actually. And after the interview, wow, it's almost like mapping out my life. And it was a very thorough interview. It makes me recognize the importance of Dragon Fruit Project.
I feel like I'm not heard very often, but I also, I don't have a voice. And going through that process of talking to someone who's like genuinely interested in my story and my experiences was really empowering.
I didn't want to get in the way of his story, so I wanted to do the interview as non-intrusively as possible so that he can just share from his heart, and I just wanted to guide him along on the question. We had guideline questions to ask the interviewee. I think he's afraid of how people view him in society and how he might actually physically get heard.
Growing up, I didn't have any role models or any people I could really look up to because it's so hard for me to find people who look like me.
Being a community organizer in the queer and Asian space is very personal, right? I tell my story all the time. I support other folks in telling their story, and it's always scary to tell our story.
In the work that we do with Network on Religion and Justice is going to those churches, asking people for their stories, or churches contacting us saying, we need to have this discussion. There are members in our congregation who just came out.
I just ran into somebody about 3 weeks ago at a meeting, and he said, I attended a conference that you spoke at when I was 19, and because of that I became a caseworker. I work with people who have AIDS, and I made that choice because of you.
Considering myself both Asian American and gay during that time, which was actually the mid-70s, and also just identifying politically as a leftist, talking about my history helped me to re-engage or recommit to things.
You know what I've been doing is lately, when I give talks, I've been talking about things as her stories, because I'm kind of like a 80s woman of color feminist. So like her story, and then I'm saying history, and then I was saying their stories. And I'm not even sure if their stories make sense to people, but I want to talk about it in terms of leaving evidence. I'm very concerned about all of these stories being lost, these stories of activism, these stories of sort of cultural productions that I never knew about, and why don't I know about them? So I'm questioning why and what we don't know, as well as we need to do something about documenting.
My parents never really took pictures of us, and my mom always tells me how my white grandparents would always take pictures of our white cousins instead. As somebody who's mixed, I'm really often invalidated, and my story is often overlooked or regarded as not as important. And so it's really important to me to be a part of the project and to have my story matter.
The act of transcribing and interviewing somebody and meeting them and spending that time with the text and with the person is invaluable. And the fact that more and more people show up to the transcribing days shows that word of mouth is working.
Because it's the stories that unify us and make us feel that we're not alone anymore.
What I love about API Quality and the Dragon Fruit Project is that it really values the power of stories. So the other part is that they're really, really interested in those stories.
You have to care about your history because if you don't, no one else will.
History is just really dynamic. It's like always changing. And like the Dragon Fruit Project is a way to like document like the change. It just shows that like we like continue resisting and existing and just like trying to survive.
If there's anyone that has never done any type of activism or volunteering or being a part of something, this is a great first step to just start with what you know about yourself and what you hope for.
Because I think it's really important to capture our South Asian LGBT stories and the API stories just generally, because our history is important, and if we don't tell our history, then the blanks get filled in by somebody else.